final presentation to the commissioners. So we value your feedback to date so far, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say about this presentation. And then kind of moving forward to next stages, we'll give kind of an update of where things are at. Sam, at this point, do you want to step in and kind of talk about some of the comments we've received so far?
Absolutely. And I'm getting some background noise, so I don't know if you can mute, or maybe somebody muted themselves. I think it went away. You know, we're heading into the home stretch to take this, the work that you all have done to the commission for their consideration and what I think will be acceptance. And so I wanted to talk about a little bit, you know, what this plan is, what it isn't, what are the next steps. And quite frankly, I am just really excited about the amount of participation that we have had, the really thoughtful and creative thinking that people have brought. And I am always just very, very grateful for people such as yourselves willing to put in the time and effort to you know, really think through things and essentially be thoughtful in the process. We've had a lot of creative input as well too, and some feedback on our guiding principles and outcome statement, as well as I think some questions of like, okay, you've engaged us, but then what happens after this? And I think in particular, as we look to bring forth a vision that really balances some of the commercial interest with the need for public access and desire for public access, and as well as making sure that we have, you know, some mission-driven enterprises on the peninsula. As we move forward with that, then we're going to get into a lot more detail. But some of the feedback we've gotten is like, you know, well, we feel like we've kind of put a proposal out there, and you know what's going to happen with that. I want to assure everyone that the port staff is absolutely listening, and I can see this plan has taken a different shape than what I had first thought about was going to happen. And I think in particular, some of the real interest on the overwater structure too, and what can happen there, you know, what will be a good balance on the very north end of the peninsula, making sure that we're, you know, incorporating, you know, pedestrian access, really being mindful about sea level rise and environmental restoration. I want to assure you that we've heard all of that, and it's going to take some time for us to then come up with actionable plans that that both we can afford to do, that we can get permits to do, and that we're going to continue to have the community support to do. So this is a big first step for us to take, is to, you know, move forward to say, great, we're going to move forward with redeveloping the peninsula in a way that balances a lot of these things. And that's huge. I just want to, you know, take a moment to recognize that is a huge accomplishment right there. It's just a coalesce of vision. And then from this point, you know, we'll be continuing to reach out to the various organizations that have interest in specific areas, or, you know, certainly as we market particular portions of the property. You know, we do everything in the public, and so we'll want to keep you engaged with that. But I just want to be clear, like, you know, we're not going to the commission with like these specific things are going to go in these exact spots. And I think truly what is more important to me is that, you know, we've taken another step in forming the relationships, that we can continue to collaborate with each other, not necessarily, you know, go head to head competing against each other, but really, yeah, this is a collaborative process that is going to evolve over time. I also want to assure you, and my staff can back me up on this, is I'm not a person that languishes long in planning, you know, so I don't, this is not an endless planning process for me, as I really want to turn to action and to see how we're going to make things happen. So thank you so much for all of the time and effort that you've put in thus far. And I'm not going to take up any more of Amos's time because he's got a lot of PowerPoint slides to get through.
Sam, this is Ray, could I just make a comment about that overview? And
Absolutely.
I appreciate you talking to exactly what this process is and what it isn't. And I'll just comment from the tribe's perspective. Sometimes when we're asked to participate in this, people will take that as we agree with everything that's proposed. That's not the process here. We are here giving input. It's not my place to necessarily agree right now at the end, or that process will come later. Interaction, engagement with the tribe will come later on specific projects. So I always like to state that, because sometimes just by participating, people think the tribe is absolutely agreeing. And quite honestly, I haven't gotten there yet. I think this has been really helpful input, and that's exactly what it is. So correct me if I'm wrong.
That you're absolutely right. And you know, it's like I said, I feel like we are embarking upon the formation of partnerships with a lot of different entities, including the tribe. And so, yeah, as we get into specifics, you know, we have everything from, you know, do you agree in general, and then a more formal consultation process that we need to go through. So I appreciate that no one's, you know, kind of signing on the dotted line and saying this is a hard and fast plan and this is what we're going to do and we're all in agreement, because quite frankly it just doesn't have that much detail to it.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the participation and the insight that everybody has brought to this process.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Peters. Okay, Amos, back over to you.
Perfect. All right. So there is a lot of familiar stuff in this presentation. It's just a culmination of everything that we've gone through. So I'll run through it, and then at the end, just provide opportunity for some feedback, any kind of comments. If there's certain slides or information that you may have omitted that you recall throughout all of our meetings that you say, well, why isn't that included? Feel free to bring that up, and we can definitely address that and consider that as part of moving forward into the public outreach and then the final commission presentation. So start off with the introduction and the public outreach plan. Basically an overview of the port submission statement and just kind of commission goals. We've been through all of this, but basically kind of creating economic opportunities by connecting Thurston County to the world by air, land, and sea. That's kind of a boiled down version of what this particular outreach plan and Destination Waterfront plan is about. Kind of follow up of the Vision 2050 plan. This all started with a CURB grant. Back in May, the port got approval for $50,000, and that helped with this study. And some of the comments or the key aspects of that was basically building community awareness of the port, aligning investments with community priorities, strengthen the partnerships, and establish a shared vision for port focus and impact. And that's what we're trying to achieve here with this particular plan. Some other comment and feedback we received from the advisory group was a guiding principles and outcome statements. So we coordinate with the port and they put together these guiding principles. So I just want to run through those. You've already seen them initially, but we did make a few edits. So balance and honor. Destination Waterfront Plan will balance commercial development with a mix of emission-driven enterprises that incorporate our maritime heritage, beauty of the natural environment, and rich artistic community. The Port of Olympia supports the implementation of the cities of Olympia's downtown strategy and honors the Squaxin Island tribe who have stewarded these lands and water since the time immemorial. Sustainability. Development of the Port Peninsula will address the reality of sea level rise and environmental legacies by incorporating principles of sustainable design and striving for a net positive environmental impact. The destination waterfront will create a balanced portfolio of businesses and endeavors that is financially sustainable. And then community. Through community and neighborhood coordination, the destination waterfront will welcome visitors and local alike, will amplify the efforts to attract kids and lifelong learners, and provide opportunities to learn, work, and play. Development of the Port Peninsula adds to the resiliency of the community by creating economic opportunities, stewarding the natural environment, and caring for community assets. So a lot of text there, but basically trying to boil down and summarize where this all came from, why we're moving forward, and kind of the root of the mission behind this. And the outcome statement, I think this is actually the same text that you saw originally. I won't go through and read it all, but basically that's the outcome statement. If you have comments, I think we've kind of closed up the window on that, but if there is something additional that you thought, oh, you missed one little piece here, feel free to let me know. So basically an overview again, you've seen this slide, I don't know, like a dozen times maybe, but the organization chart of who we are, who we're responsible to, general public advisory group, select stakeholders, and then who our support team is. And then all of the advisory group members. So again, just wanted to reference everybody that has been a part of this particular plan and just appreciation for all that they do and the feedback that they provided us. The additional members that were added kind of later in the process, we definitely value your feedback as well, and appreciate you being part of this to help guide kind of this plan. And then we had a few select stakeholder interviews. So again, the port felt that there were a few organizations in the area that we wanted to reach out specifically to and get some of their feedback as well. And then looking at the schedule, you can see we're at the end of this particular phase. I think at the end we can talk a little bit more, and Sam can chime in about where we're headed in the future. Just like you're saying, kind of individual site-specific action plan items. So basically taking this plan, and then now we can move forward, hopefully in the future, to be able to start to put this plan into action and kind of trigger some development. Public involvement is very important to the Port. International Association for Public Participation, we're in that involve, collaborate stage, really just trying to reach out and provide some feedback from the public. We have some numbers here to share with you. So social media posts and outreach, 10,793. That's pretty astounding, in my opinion, just the number of people that have been reached through the Port's social media outreach. We have 319 public meeting participants, and then a little over 3,000 emails and contacts that we've reached through this outreach process. And then just kind of overview of our kind of calendar or schedule of the process. So you can see in the various colors, the red, the public outreach meetings, the blue is advisory board meetings, the gray was some select stakeholder meetings and interviews, and then also making sure the commission is involved and aware. So there's been a number of commission meetings that we presented to them as well. So starting back in mid-October and then kind of coming to an end here on March 8th with the final commission presentation. The public outreach summary, you've seen this before as well, but kind of number of responses in survey 1 was 442, survey number 2, 385. So again, a good number turnout of people and getting their feedback. So moving into the public input summary, this we want to just go through basically survey 1, a quick overview of the results. So basically the response locations, you can see a lot of that. Northeast Olympia was kind of the majority, but a good spectrum of people that have provided feedback from the area. How familiar they were with the Vision 2050 plan. And then some kind of key hopes and goals for the development plan will achieve for this area. And the community hub, open space and recreation, access to water were the top 3 things that kind of rose up that the public really wanted to see come out of this. Development opportunities, they public would like us to consider the arts and entertainment, business center, public access, sailing center, and recreation, kind of at the top of the list there as well. So this is a summary of all the text feedback that we've received in survey number 1, boiled down to kind of some keywords so we could try to quantify what it is that the public was looking for. And then ways we can improve public access to water. Again, the top 3, small boat resources like rentals, docks, extending the walking trail, public access, parks, and green space. Again, that community sailing event center came to the top as well. And so we'll get into it, but basically we'll have some slides sharing how we've actually incorporated a lot of the public's feedback into this development plan. And then how should the area look in 30 years? Again, public access, public space, parks, that was very top priority. Businesses, small business connection to downtown was also critical. Environmental remediation, restoration, we can touch on that, but it's not necessarily part of this particular plan, but moving forward, that is something that we should address with each individual site. And then a mix of compatible uses, recreation, tourism was also mixed in there as well. And then what opportunities would benefit the community, the public access amenities, education museum, businesses, small and local, arts and entertainment, sailing center pops back up again. So all these features or aspects we've tried to address in our use or recommended proposed uses for each of those individual sites that you're familiar with. And then additional thoughts or ideas to be considered. So there's a lot of focus on collaboration, making sure that we're collaborating with the public, with the neighborhood, the adjacent facilities and businesses in the area, maintain awareness of impacts from sea level rise and how that's going to be addressed, community multi-use type spaces, maritime, environmental, cultural, ensure environmental and financial sustainability, which we've already touched on, is something that Port's driven to address in this particular plan. The outdoor public space, the dog park was one of those comments. And then some concerns about tourist accommodations, things like the RV site, the hotel, and then concerns about proposed use within the context of each site, just making sure each site fits well, that the use within that site fits within the context of the overall peninsula development plan. And then moving on to survey 2, basically trying to get some feedback of how familiar people were with the original destination development plan. 44% of those were somewhat familiar with what the plan was. So basically just understand that they know what they were talking about. And we had some links there in that survey for the public to be able to familiarize themselves with the plan. And then just a number of people that participated in survey number 1. So a little less than half, but a good turnout there as well. So people returning back to continue the input process. We modified these particular slides from the last time we shared them, basically tried to make them a little easier to read and less busy, reduce the graphics down. So you see here that the access to water, small watercraft launch was still high on the list. We put that on the far left, so kind of left to right as far as highest or most preferred to least preferred on the far right. And then just you can see that the top 3 was a spread of only 39 points. So the public really appreciated these 3 particular ways to access to water the most. And then question 4 about how important the park is. We went through this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Would like to see some sort of community play structure for the public, for the kids. Again, here the potential shoreline improvement options that the public preferred the most. We modified the slide. Living shoreline on the far left, that was highly preferred. And then a kind of a rock shoreline, reinforced earth, and bulkhead seawall were also on there. The rank and order of preference of particular architectural style, you can see here Pacific Northwest was far preferred as the #1 option. A longhouse was also kind of right there in the 2nd place. 3rd, 4th, and 5th, pretty close, craftsman, industrial, traditional. So again, hopefully this this particular slide is a lot easier to read and understand. And we shared some of the graphics on the bottom, a little small, but I think people familiar with the survey can be able to recall what those images were. We also have links on the port's website as with all of the complete survey results. So if there is any question about what some of this was referring to, the public can go back to the port's webpage and check it out. And then top 5 images related to paths and connectors within the development area. Again, these images are a little small, but hopefully gets the point across of the boardwalk. That was the preferred option. Tree line was also second, and then third, fourth, and fifth, really close, was the combined bike path, the paved open area, and then the separated bike and pedestrian paths. Right there in that tail end, all those crushed stone, concrete, pavers, landscape, they all fit very closely together, kind of in that cluster. And then a paved infill was actually pretty low as far as preferred connector option. Then the next one about question 8, top 2 preferred options for event gathering space. You can see through just this bar chart that the covered wood structure was by far the preferred option. Covered steel, open crushed stone, indoor enclosed were also pretty close, and then the open concrete gathering space was kind of the tail end, the lower preferred option. This one's a little, not say confusing, just different as far as it was a scale of most preferred to least preferred. So I can see the top left of the Arbor Archway, 216, and then you actually have a negative below the bars, least preferred option, Beacon, at negative 340. So more people were actually opposed to the Beacon approach than people were supporting or for the Arbor Archway. So kind of message received on that one. And then this slide, we basically going through how we have taken some of the feedback we've heard and incorporated that into this plan. So additional meetings added to the project schedule. That was something that the commission asked us to add a few more meetings. It was based off of some of their feedback that they received from the public. So we added a few more extra meetings, extended the schedule, a longer outreach process. So our surveys, we had a set timeline. We were asked to extend that survey timeline. So we pushed those out another week and a half, I believe, just to allow for more time for the community to provide us with their input. And then some comments about making sure to ensure environmental and financial sustainability. So we brought in some slides to explain the port's role for both environmental stewardship and financial stewardship. The transparency, wanting to be open and upfront. So we're providing a project webpage that the port has up, basically establishing all of our meetings, all the presentations, all the outreach data, the survey results, all of that's available for the public. So it's very transparent what the comments were, what the information is out there. So we're not trying to deceive or kind of shuffle things. It's very, very apparent, very obvious. Access to public outreach material, that's again up on the website. Document community comments and incorporate as attachments. So there was a lot of feedback, a lot of open text type notes and messages that we received. So all of that has been recorded in a database that we will be compiling and putting as attachment to the final presentation to the commission. So if there is any question or the commissioner or anybody else wants to dig into a little bit further, they can definitely go into that document and find more information there. And then the documentation of the summary of the survey results, that's a reference tool moving forward. So as we move into the next stage of actual potential development for some of these sites, the summary of survey results and information, including this particular PowerPoint presentation, should be a reference tool so people can go back and look at that and say, what did the public say and how can we implement those comments? Public features suggested, so a boating center, that was highly suggested. So we brought that in as a potential proposed use for some of the sites, Overwater 2, for example. Light industrial, that was brought up in the first public outreach meeting. So we heard that repeated a few times. So that's been included as a potential use as well. Addressing sea level rise, we brought in a few slides to explain how that is being addressed and how that can be addressed for each of the sites. But again, that's something that is site specific, so that should be covered when future development happens on those particular sites. Retain some existing public amenities. So there were some comments about the parking up at North Point, being able to go out and visit and look at the water and experience that to connect with the water that way. There's some other things like the boat dock or the Billy Frank Jr. Trail. So all of these amenities are being retained right now. Mixed use and housing. So the idea of getting some multiple kind of tenants or uses involved on each site. So we've incorporated that as well as some proposed use for some of these particular sites, and view preservation. You'll see some slide a little bit later in the presentation about how we're addressing some of that. Zoning the sea level rise. So this is what we talked about, I think it was about a month ago, but basically what the port can and can't do. And I won't go through all of these regulations, but we are following the RCWs established by the state as port as an entity, what they can and can't do, and addressing how they can handle the funds and assets that they have. And another page of those as well, what they can do to lease space, how they can improve lands, and basically kind of summarizing what they are able to do. And then here is zoning. So the municipal code has certain proposed uses that are allowed in this urban waterfront zone. And so we've highlighted those on the left. All of those, pretty much as a summary, I've made bold some of the more appealing or uses that we feel could actually land in this area, and then colored even some more that have been mentioned by the public: offices, boat club, boat storage, commercial recreation, museums, mixed use, retail, hotels, things like that. There is also a couple notes just that RV parks currently are allowed for the urban waterfront zone, and we are going through a text amendment process to further define that particular use. And then the United States Army Corps of Engineers, certain development is permitted within these, so we're also following up with what they're allowing for these this development plan to make sure that we're in compliance with them as well. And then some more regulations that we're following. So allowable heights, 40 feet, 45, 65 for the urban waterfront. The Shoreline Master Program also has their own established height requirements that we're going to make sure that each of the individual sites follow. Allowable coverage. And then also, here's another one, Shoreline Master Program, 40 feet was their height. Setbacks that we must meet, and parking. That's another thing that if we are developing this area, we need to make sure that we are meeting the parking requirements. And you see the map on the right that there is, the City of Olympia has an exempt parking area, which this development fits within. So could definitely take advantage of that, but want to be mindful about each use and the facility and make sure that it meets the parking needs that is being generated. Here's a slide explaining the view protection. So there's a municipal code that we need to address, and this is pulled from their map. Basically, views of things like Mount Rainier, the Olympic Mountains, Bud Inlet, Black Hills, Capitol Building, or Capitol Lake and the surrounding hillsides. So individual development on these sites must make sure and protect views to those areas. The little red arrows you see on the right, those are kind of directional, pointing at some of those key features. So you can see there in the center, there's basically two arrows pointing up towards the Olympics and out into the inlet. And there's some others pointing kind of back down towards the Capitol Building, for example, or Black Hills. So again, each site will need to make sure and address that by reserve reasonable portion for territorial views, significant number of people from the public right-of-way. So basically allowing people in the public right-of-way to be able to see those views. And it doesn't have to be continuous, but there are windows of opportunity that needs to be established. Maybe that's through lookouts, viewpoints, or view corridors that allow for that scenic vista to be maintained. And then sea level rise. You've seen this slide, but basically on the left there, you see basically all the ways that sea level rise could be addressed, and I'm sure there are other features as well. This was developed by City of Olympia, LOT, and the port in a collaborative effort. So we're definitely looking at sea level rise and have a plan. You see on this next a few slides ahead, but basically some options. So we pulled together a few graphic slides to share with the public what some sea level rise measures could look like, and kind of priming the pump, if you will, for future development of how we can implement that on these sites. Example at the top of the screen there you see, so the Billy Frank Jr. Trail, for example, could be what you see there, and then in the event of sea level rise, that is covered by water, but when the waters recede, returns to functioning trail, living shoreline, more solid walls. So again, multiple options, and we're looking at ways to address those. This slide is an example of how we could implement some of those sea level rise measures. I'm not saying this is how it has to be. This is just one take at how we could address that. I think it does need to be looked at kind of holistically, but moving forward, each site needs to take measures and action, what would benefit them the most, and as well as the neighboring sites. So you can see in green, living shorelines. So along the top right, up where site H is, for example, that might be a great opportunity for living shoreline. There's not a lot of room for development there, and a long kind of shoreline. So being able to take that and utilize that as a living shoreline would be good. Overwater site 1 and 2, that would be, it's pretty much already there, but raised buildings. So getting the pilings to be up above that sea level rise elevation. So raising the building up would be a great use for that. You see in the yellow, raised landscaping. So we're proposing maybe along sites E, F, and G, as well as maybe along site B and possibly A, some sort of raised berm, for example, that could help address some of the incoming seawaters during those events. Flood wall in the purple there along site C and D, that might be a great opportunity where we basically have a lot of access from the land onto the slips out there, the marina, and providing some sort of hard line there to be able to easily access to the boats and still kind of raise everything up out of the mud flats. Rapid deployment, I put in a few of those, so maybe there at the Hearthfire building, there might be something there, for example, where the building's already established, it's set, they're not going to go in and raise that up, but could there be some methods to deploy at that particular building? Not necessarily part of this action plan, but there's an example of buildings that already are in the potential sea level rise area. There's methods to help address that without having to do too much of a drastic renovation to that facility. Or maybe there at the boat launch, there's some sort of gate or wall that could be deployed to address sea level rise when it happens, and then that gate could be dropped down after the waters recede. A raised street, that might be hard to establish because the street's already there, but potentially there along site B could be an example where there's already some raised elevation. We just need to make sure that access to the port terminal and the entries that are there, as well as sites along the waterfront, are maintained. So there's potential there, but we don't want to exclude it from an option that needs to be studied for each site. And then moving forward with the development site plan, again, these are all of the sites that we're looking at, sites A through K, along with overwater 1 and 2. Some of the connectors and linkages, you've seen this before as well. So basically want to make sure we study where those connectors can fall into play for each of those specific sites. So as moving forward, we need to make sure that there's some pathways or linkages that provide that connection back to the downtown area. The city has a proposed bike lane there along Washington Street. So could we provide a connector that would bring bike traffic and foot traffic down through that route to be able to provide that kind of quicker connection to the downtown core. And then again, sharing the travel distances. So this is a walkable site, you know, anywhere from a quarter mile with 35 minutes up to 1 mile, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. So depending on how adventurous people are, you can definitely walk from one end of the site to the other, or connect back to downtown pretty easily throughout the day. Part of that gateway connection, I wanted to share this slide again. These are some images that were presented and voted or kind of commented on, voted on from Survey 2. And the Arbor Archway was by far the #1 choice. Plaza open area was second choice, and informational was a third choice. So we'll look at ways that we can fold these in to individual sites and try to come up with some sort of recurring theme that maybe makes it a cohesive application for the overall destination development plan that could be implemented as sites start to be developed. So running through these again, I can kind of clip through them pretty quick. These are all sites, site potential use sites that you've seen. Site A, looking at potentially a hotel, a cultural center, or mixed use. Some limitations all established up there on the top right, basically what the current use is, what the potential uses are, what it's zoned, the height and setback, as well as some of the shoreline and building coverage that's being established on each of these sites. Site B, again, existing to remain for now. This is the one where the public said, we like going out here. We like to visit this parking area and be able to sit, eat our lunch, check, and kind of gaze off into the inlet. But there is some potential maybe to update this, provide maybe a more organized parking layout to maximize use for that site. Site C, mostly existing to remain. A lot of amenities and features are there, the boat launch, the area, Olympia area rowing building, some of the laundry and shower facilities. So looking at this as mostly probably should be existing to remain, but again, don't want to exclude it from potential development. Site D, currently looking at an admin building for this particular site, maybe some mixed use or light industrial. Those are some potential uses we're considering. Site E, proposing an RV resort on this particular location. And as we mentioned before, that could have a pretty short return on investment. So even if this were to go forward as an RV resort, in the future down the road, another potential development, mixed use light industrial, might come along, and there would be that return on investment would be complete, and then they would be able to be opened up to some other kind of redevelopment for that site. And then site F, again, mostly existing to remain. That's the marine supply and boatworks on that site. Don't really propose a lot of use, but making sure that the adjacent sites do coordinate and kind of address being a neighbor to this particular site and facility. Site G, just in front of that, what could go there? It is a pretty long, skinny site, so maybe there's some potential mixed use, dry storage, or even light industrial might fit well within there. And then site H, as I mentioned before, is pretty long and skinny. There's not a lot of room for development. So is that existing to remain? Is that a way to opportunity for shoreline improvements and create a living shoreline that we could really maximize the amount of living shoreline? So I think there has kind of better chance of functioning and serving the environment a little bit better there. Creating a linear park, some of the park features and things that the city was looking for, the public was looking for, connectors and things. Could we start to implement that on this particular site? And then site I, we mentioned as potential hands-on children's museum expansion right behind their current facility, but other potential use might be mixed use or light industrial. And then same thing with site J, a potential lot expansion for that site, as that is immediate property resident there, but also mixed use, dry storage, light industrial. And then site K, the one kind of open inland site, if you will. There was some mention that this should have a key kind of pedestrian amenity because it is kind of the crux of the connection and linkage, as you can maybe recall from the overall linkage plan. So being able to walk from, say, the farmer's market to the east onto this site and then have some sort of connector to the rest of the development other potential use be light industrial, mixed use, or there's been discussion of a maintenance shop as well. So just studying some of those options. And then Overwater 1 and Overwater 2. Overwater 1 is a KGY site, and there's some potential to turn that into a museum or a cultural center, or combine again with Overwater 2 site. And then Overwater 2, a lot of interest here, kind of the topmost kind of interest, if you will, is a boating center, or also potential commercial use, maybe like a fish market, for example, or a cultural center. So again, it's a pretty popular site. So just looking at how this could be best utilized and how we can hear the community as far as what their use is and how the port can respond to address that, as well as meet some of their development goals that they've established from the beginning of this presentation. And then next steps. So moving forward, really we just have 2 more meetings. The kind of final presentation, basically what we've shared with you today. We're going to take that to the public. So we'd like to kind of solicit your feedback. This was our opportunity to share with you what we've heard, what we've gathered and collected throughout this whole process, always since November. Make sure that we are kind of sharing what it is that you've shared with us. So if there's something that we haven't heard, we definitely want you to reach out and tell us now, because we want to make sure to get that included in this. And then we'll have our final presentation to the commission on March 8th. And then they're basically kind of a formal procedure. I think March 22nd, I believe, is a follow-up to the commission where they can make a ruling on this to accept it as a development plan. That concludes it. So open this up to some feedback. Sam, was there any other comments that you wanted to add before we start to get some feedback from the advisory group?
No, I'm just interested in hearing from folks.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Amos, Sue has had her hand up for a while. So
Okay,
start
sorry.
with her.
Sorry, Sue, what do you got?
Just a couple questions, or a question and a comment, actually. You had mentioned several times during the early part of the presentation that environment wasn't a part of this plan. You said that a couple times, and I'm a little confused about that statement. I just didn't know what your intention was in saying that, because it looks like there's quite a bit of concern, and there's a lot of openings for looking at how the plan is, or the actual development's going to impact the environment. So
Sure.
what were you thinking when you said that?
I think I'll probably get a message from Sam saying probably choose my words differently next time. But
Yes.
All right.
yeah, so we do want to address environmental and sustainable design is definitely a concern of the port. We want to make sure that we're addressing that with each site. I think basically what I meant was this particular development plan, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of how we address that. We can make some recommendations, but this particular development plan is just looking forward, kind of a master development kind of overview, if you will.
Then the other thing is with sea level rise, it's going to be really important that the city and the port take into consideration that just putting up walls and barriers to the sea is not going to do it. Water not only comes in, but it comes up. And the port is built on dredge material from the estuary. And it's kind of just sitting there like a bowl of jelly, if you will, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And as that water becomes more available to the land, it's not only going to come in, but it's going to rise up through the fill. So that really needs to be taken into consideration.
Right.
That's
and
all.
there are definitely ways to address that through construction. So if you basically kind of a cap, if you will, that you could put down some sort of slab that is treated with a water permeable, impermeable membrane or additive to basically create a barrier from water rising up into a building, for example, and then kind of basically a bathtub for that particular building. So yes, that is definitely something that needs to be addressed. We didn't want to get too involved in sea level rise, but basically saying that yes, we are going to be looking at that site specific. So each particular use, we need to make sure that it's appropriate for that site and for that building or use.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sue. And Sam, if there's anything else that you wanted to add on my response to those, feel free.
And the only thing that I would add is certainly the port has other ongoing obligations and desires for looking at Butt Inlet a cleanup in particular, you know, and those are efforts that, while they're not specifically included in this development vision, it is something that kind of runs in parallel, and those two things will be connected in some ways, but this plan itself is not seeking to address that. As we looked at, you know, everything from, you know, we'll need to do some dredging of our marina and near our boatyard in the near future. So, you know, as we plan for those, that also has an effect on what we might do on the shoreline. So while this isn't a plan to achieve those remediation goals, the port sees them as intertwined. So Sue, I just wanted to address that, you know, your comments, some of like, you know, absolutely, that's at the forefront of our planning efforts, and you know, we're constantly engaged in that. As well as then continuing to participate in and collaborate with the Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary EIS planning process.
Well, that's good to hear, Sam. I appreciate it. Maybe we can have a one-on-one with here pretty soon. I've been meaning to get a hold of you, but
Sure.
yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bob has written in a question, Bob Butts has written in a question that says, what are the next steps after the commissioners approve this very general set of recommendations?
I can speak to that. Some of what we're doing at the organization-wide level is I'm working with the commission to really develop a 5 to 6 year action plan for the port in general on many different fronts. This one being a highlight of that plan. And so we're working with a consultant now to look at everything from our financial capacity to our organizational capacity. And really what I'm hoping to do is that to bring this in, have the commission really sort through their priorities and say, this is what we want to focus on in the next 5 years. I know that individually and as a body, they're very interested in seeing things come to fruition here on the Port Peninsula. And now that the work, now that we've gotten all this great input, is to go back and say, okay, what's highest priority? What do we have the capacity to do? What order do we do? And then we start working that plan. So that's, you know, I would expect that by the end of this year, and certainly even going into our budget process, you're going to see some capital project plans that come out that start to show some of these efforts be put in them for the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, Gretchen has her hand raised.
All right, Gretchen. Gretchen, are you on mute maybe?
Yeah.
Oh. No, we still can't hear you.
Yeah.
Now I'm on unmute.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, I haven't done meetings on this particular computer and I could not figure it out. I apologize. So as a later attendee of these meetings, I just want to thank you for the work, and I want to say that I would welcome input on, I don't quite understand the best way to give you input. And on the one hand, on quite a few things that were presented, the comments were, this has already been established. And so I know that coming late, it's different, or I have to kind of accept that part. But is it to give them right this second? Is it to write them in afterwards? Is it both? Does it depend on the length of the process? Can you still hear me? Because my internet connection's not great.
Yeah, now is great. We're kind of running out of time. So if there is any comments you have now, and even if it's something that you say we've already established, it's already been determined, you're on this board, we want to hear your comments. I think it would be good to
Okay,
the rest of the
just
group to also hear some of that.
Yeah, I'll just sort of try to keep it to too general, and then if I have some more specific questions, I may write them
Perfect.
in. But I strongly feel that Site A and Site B are great public amenities, and that makes me uncomfortable to keep having hotel be the #1 use that I see on Site A. I know you've included cultural center, but it's that private public thing. And I just think they're incredible public amenities that we owe it to future generations to appreciate that. That view is amazing from there. And the connection to the Billy Frank pathway could be kind of expanded there. So I feel really strongly about Site A in particular as this amazing spot that shouldn't be we should very carefully go in the right direction and not go in the wrong. Wrong's not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Keep it for the public. And then the other part is a lot of the discussion about sea level rise. You've said it's site specific, but sea level rise is really about the whole sound. And every time you put up a hard barrier in one place, it's going to mean more erosion in another place. So I think with both of my comments, I just want to be sure the vision is maybe clearer, more specific, so that there's something to push back against. When someone makes a proposal, it needs to go up against the vision. And I think what some of us maybe are having a harder time with is that the vision is is not specific. And you're saying the specificity will come with individual sites, but I hope that the vision will push the sites rather than just bend to what a developer wants, which I'm not saying I've seen happen on the port, but you see that happen in lots of places. And so making sure, I worry about this idea that we're just going to put up walls for sea level rise, and want to make sure that we're really understanding, which it's not my area of expertise, but it's an enormous issue, such an opportunity for public education and public participation, I think. And I think there need to be perhaps more ideas that are like Yager Park, where with stormwater, it changes its use. During stormwater, it becomes a pond.
Are we?
Yeah, Gretchen, I think we've lost sound from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do
really
have.
Appreciate all the work.
And I see Bob Van Trol has his hand raised.
All right. Thank you, Gretchen. I've got that noted, and we can maybe follow up as well. Bob, let's get your feedback.
Good morning. I'll actually put my picture up. How's that? See, it's been, it's a good process. I'm sorry some of us got involved late in the process. This follows on to something I did a number of years ago. But I do want to point out that in many of the slides you had on the front end of this, that there was a high correlation here to people wanting access, public access and recreation. And that seems to be a point, except for like maybe the view corridors out on B, the recreation and public access for small boats, like kayaks, paddleboards, and so on, is totally missing in the discussion here. In the meantime, we're taking up one of the most valuable pieces of potential access with a RV park that you consider, that Amos kind of continues to prompt as a done deal throughout the presentation. So I'm not sure if there's a way to split that RV park into, if we don't move it, to split it and to allow actually some launch points for small boats kayaks and so on. You know, economic development, as I am very aware, is a strong point of having a port district, and it doesn't have to be on the waterfront, however. And so moving the RV park back and giving the community some access is, I think, needs to be a very important component. And I'm going to continue to advocate for public boat launch for small boats and for recreation access directly to the water. So anyway, hey, good process, Amos and Sam and everybody. I will continue to stay involved.
Great. Thank you, Bob.
If I can respond to that to Mr. Van Schroer, I absolutely hear that. And I would say that there are some, there have been previous plans to build overwater structure in front of where we're proposing the RV park that would provide for some small boat launch, et cetera. So we're looking at that. And particularly, I think that that's fairly ripe for some recreational funding from state RCO, et cetera. So I think that if we're really using good design, that these things don't need to be mutually exclusive. And very much here, you know, people, I think that the overriding principle is that people want access to the water, and that access includes everything from being able to get on a boat to being able to sit and look out over it. And so, you know, that's going to be a principle that guides us all the way through. I will also tell you that, you know, that, and this is one of my personal sayings, is that, you know, the port does not need to make money everywhere, but it does need to make money somewhere. And, you know, we see 2/3 of our revenue come from earned revenue in a competitive marketplace. And so, you know, and that's the balancing act that we're trying to do here. So very much appreciate your comments. And I'd actually love to follow up if individually, if you wouldn't mind, if you would be willing to give me some more time, and I can tell you some of the other ideas we have for small boat launches.
Thanks, Sam. So just housekeeping, it is almost 11 o'clock. So just wanted to say thank you to the advisory group who showed up and part of this, the whole process. We appreciate those that were from the beginning and even those that came in at the end. Grateful for all your feedback and input. I am going to stick around. There's a few other people that wanted to make comments. So definitely want to hear what you have to say. But respectful of time, I just want to be able to release some of those that do have other meetings or commitments they need to get to.
Yeah, I do see that Chuck Fowler would like to make a comment, but maybe you want to, your people can sign off as they will, but I'll definitely stay on, and as will Amos.
All right, Stacy, I think you are up next.
Hi, greetings. Great job, and I appreciate all the work that you guys have done on this. And we've got people walking into the room. I love so many of these ideas, and I think the process has really helped refine the community's interests. And I haven't. Well, I'd like to speak on behalf of the arts makers and cultural related activities that I think are mentioned in a lot of the vision kind of things that the ports have expressed interest in, the community's expressed interest in, but we haven't necessarily seen a lot come forward to materialize those ideas. So there are a lot of makers in this town, and that are small businesses that need, that can really add a lot of vitalization to the community and become help Olympia and the South Sound region become a destination for makers. And there's enormous demand out there. And when anyway, I guess I'm going to have to submit my comments in writing to you guys. But the one thing that comes right to mind is the cultural center that has come up, and what did you guys call it? The gathering space. And in the questionnaire that you guys put out there, there was like a outside building
gathering,
and
yeah.
those gathering spaces. What really wasn't communicated in that is the need for small ish, maybe like 300, 500 size venue for gatherings. There is an enormous need in this town for small event space, and I like the idea of outside, park-like open air settings where maybe you could rent the space for a family barbecue. But there's also a huge need for all of our cultural groups to gather and have events. And so I would love to see that happen in this area somewhere. I don't know if it happens in this plan, but anyway, I'll stop talking, let other people go, and I'll submit some thoughts in writing. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacy. I think Chuck, you were up next.
Thanks, Amos. I think that you and Ron Thomas and the Thomas TAS team have done a great job with this planning study. And I think we've all had great input and opportunities to give you our ideas. I just say from the heritage side, from the maritime heritage side, we haven't come up with a specific request or a need, for example, for a maritime museum. We'd like to have a maritime museum and ought to be here. We have many interests, and we've been, the Maritime Heritage Group, South Sound Maritime Heritage Group, has been around for almost 50 years. So we see that we can fit our activities and our needs into many areas on the Port Peninsula as part of this process. So we will cooperate with the port, and we have cooperated, and the port has already given us a site for our historic tugboat Parthia, but we're also going to integrate Sandman into that. That's part of our maritime history. That's part of the working waterfront history that we have. And as some of you know, we are part of the new Maritime Washington National Heritage Area under the National Park Service. So we are going to take advantage of all these opportunities, including what the port has provided here, to fit our needs and our opportunities into that context. So we have just appreciated knowing the totality of what the opportunities are on the Port Peninsula, and we're going to work with the port to see many of our goals and our needs realized in the future months and in the future years. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Chuck. Maybe just to add to that, there has been interest in communication from various organizations, including Chuck and Stacy and others, that kind of looking for that either event center or some sort of collaborative facility that might be able to serve multiple people.
Hi.
So
I'm just listening to it while I'm.
So just looking at some opportunities, and we'd be definitely open to that. And the port would like to hear more, so continue to keep those proposals and ideas coming in. I think that's covers everybody as far as chat or people that were lined up to provide some feedback. Is there anybody else in the group that wanted to offer some comments before we close out?
I think my only comment, it's Nick Carey here at KGY, is that the presentation is very impressive, and I think the community feedback and this team's feedback has been really important. I think that I'm really supportive and excited about what this plan, has to say, and KGY is pretty supportive of the plan as well as it looks to move forward to the commission. So I thank you so much for including us and giving us the opportunity to contribute in this way. We appreciate it.
Great, thanks for the feedback, Nick. Anybody else? Looks like there was a comment in the chat from Patty about basically museum currently serves groups of that size. I think we mentioned that, was it 300 to 500? So some potential expansion further enhance that ability. So there, I mean, there's some potential in the works, it seems like, to cover that.
I've got David Paul has his hand raised.
Okay, David.
Hi, I'm with Arbutus. I'm just reiterating and sort of combining some things that a couple of people have said. I would agree that the area out at Site A, it maybe shouldn't be a hotel, but it should be for community use in the way of a cooperative museum with Native American components and maritime heritage components and other historic and cultural components. With activity spaces that, of course, something like Arbutus could support or makers could support. And I wonder if Site E, the area considered for the RV park, might be a better spot for a hotel in the future. So I'm just thinking about trying to take everyone's thinking into mind. But I strongly agree that Site A should be for community use with picnic areas and the museum and activity center. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, David. Was there anybody else? All right, I'll take that as a no. Again, thank you everybody for participating and being so involved and taking time out of your day to provide us the input and feedback that we're looking for. We are going out to the public outreach meeting. I'll send out a notice and reminder. You're welcome to attend that as well. And then the commission presentation on March 8th. And then just look forward to some potential future notices from the port as far as next steps and where we're headed from here. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.